Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to day 7, the final day of palette week, where every single day for the last 7 days I've been posting some sort of palette themed content, and I'm very excited for today's video. I do get excited to film this style of video every now and again. I hope I'm not repeating any of these. I was trying to look for if I filmed this video last year and I couldn't find it, but hopefully I'm not mistaken. But today I'm going to be talking to you about 10 eyeshadow palettes in my collection that I would declutter if I could get my money back for them. Most of these are not something I plan to declutter. I don't, like, maybe 1 or 2 will end up in my year-end declutter, but because I can't get my money back for these, I will make excuses one reason or another to keep them. But they did definitely like let me down, or were not everything I was like hoping they were gonna be, if that makes any sense. So if you're interested in the 10 palettes that didn't turn out to be everything that I was dreaming they would be, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content, palette themed content, or just hanging out and chit chatting about makeup, that is what we do over on this channel. So I hope you consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. All right, I'm gonna start with the palette that is most on the chopping block, I would say, like most likely to get decluttered out of all of these. And it's actually a palette that I purchased this year. It is the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes, the original. So this year I have definitely been craving more boring, basic neutrals. Definitely something that what I wanted this to be is just like a companion palette that I could then mix with my indie shadows, so I could create like a grounded matte base with this and then go over top with like 1 or 2 special shadows. What I don't like about this formula is that there are some shades in here that have so much kick up. Like this shade specifically has so much kick up, but I feel like that just doesn't have the pigment payoff on the eyes. I don't mind a buildable shadow, and in fact a buildable shadow is something that typically does work better for me, but I feel like with these I try and build and build and build and build, and they just don't work for me in the ways that I want. There's some shadows that are fine, and there's just others that did not work in the way that I want. Therefore, I'm trying to decide if this is worth keeping at the end of the year. I don't know. I definitely don't know. I was thinking this was going to be like my new favorite go-to companion palette. It definitely did not turn out to be that. So that is my probably top of all these, that like if I could get my money back, which if I had made a decision early enough, I could have actually returned this one because I got it from Sephora, although I hate returning makeup and it just like stresses me out. So I probably would not have anyway, but this is like top of the list. Another brand new one to my collection that I'm like, girl, we probably just didn't need to buy this. And honestly, I don't know if I could return this at this point. Again, I'm not a big returner. The Melt 12th Hour Stack. Now, I have only used this one time, so I'm still in the testing process, but as I was, there's hair in my mouth. As I was testing this out, I was just like, dang, I really thought that maybe Melt had improved their matte formula. I'll just show you all the little stacks. It's a 6-pan, like stackable with split pans, so there's 12 total shadows. I like the bulky packaging. I knew what I was getting going into this. I didn't mind that. I was really excited about this release, and rare is the day that I get excited about Melt release these days. But I just found that the mattes were still kind of difficult to work with. I feel like they were just a little bit patchy and did not blend the best together. I am still testing this, so perhaps I will change my mind. Ultimately, I did like the look that I ended up creating, but this was a very expensive thing to purchase. I want to say by the time I paid for shipping, it was almost $80, and this took almost a month to get to me. So that's a little frustrating. So like for 80 bucks, like I definitely can say that like I have something that would suffice in my collection over that. I think the only other palette in this stack that I had purchased this year, and I really don't have a lot of qualms with this palette, I just definitely didn't need this. It's the Hung Van Gogh New Neutral palette. I will say I have worn this several times on camera, and every time I wear this, I do get questions about what's on my eyes or just compliments about this one. I think my thing with this one is I just definitely have these tones in my collection, and I want to say this was $49. Not the most expensive for eyeshadow palettes, but like also I could have spent that $50 elsewhere. I also thought that the metallics were gonna be a lot more impactful. I swear I swatched these in store, and in store, maybe I was just because like I was so in the mood to buy something that like I just felt so enamored by the metallics, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are gonna be the most life-changing neutral metallics ever. They're just everyday neutral metallics that I likely have a million times over in my collection, so did I really need this? Probably not. This is still a beautiful palette. Like if you were looking for a new neutral, for a new palette that was neutral in tone for your collection, I think the quality in this is really nice. I think this is a beautiful palette. I just personally did not need to add this to my collection. All right, I have two Glamlight palettes to talk about. The first is the Glamlight Fairy Lights palette. I believe this launched holiday of 2023, and I had just discovered Glamlight. I was really just kind of getting into makeup, and at that point I was just so excited about everything that Glamlight was releasing that I just like had to have this. It's a 6-pan all sparkly metallic palette, but these are just like sparkly metallics. They're not duochromes, they're not shifty shadows, and for me, I don't mind a 6-pan companion palette. I love my Diveroon 6-pan companion, but those shades are just a little bit more special in my opinion. These shades are really just something that I don't find myself like excited to reach into this even as a companion palette, and I really only find myself likely digging into this around the holiday times when I'm maybe reaching for like a sparkly gold, but I definitely did not need to add this to my collection. I'm sure this was like upwards of 40, I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure this was like at minimum $36 or more. I just didn't need to buy that. And then also, I remember being so excited about the Glaminatrix Sugar and Spice palette. I love the outer packaging. I think the outer packaging was like something I was so excited about. I will say I have swapped out a couple of my like small matte shadows. I just, like this palette really just stumped me in terms of color story. Like the selection of mattes, there was like a bright yellow and then like a lighter yellow and maybe like a teal. I don't know. There was something about the matte color story that I just, it felt like a very chaotic palette and like a palette that didn't really know like its identity. Like it didn't know what color story it was really going for. That being said, I do really like a lot of the special shadows in here. The shade Basil I think is such a beautiful ethereal blue silver sparkly shadow. I love the palette for that. I think Basil is really kind of what I keep this palette around for, and it's like this palette I'm sure was like somewhere between $50 and $60. One shadow is not worth $50 to $60, especially a blue sparkly silvery shadow that I'm certain I have in other indie palettes. Not like there's still some beautiful shadows in here, don't get me wrong, but certainly if I could just go back in time and not buy this, I don't think I would be feeling regret or like I was missing this in my collection. Then I have two Huda large palettes, and I think the thing with this is similar to Natasha Denona. I've found myself as just like a collector of certain eyeshadow brands or palettes for a long time, and I feel like I'm finally starting to break that a little bit. I didn't buy the Natasha Denona Ruxa last year. There's even a couple of Bella Beauté bar palettes that I've skipped this year, which I never thought I would do. The Huda large palettes, because she only launches one a year, which I think last year was her last year doing so that's probably honestly good. I just was kind of in that collector's mentality, but the last two releases I definitely didn't need and would trade my money back to, like I would happily give the Pretty Grunge palette back for the, what are these, 60, almost $70. I think this is a beautiful palette. I honestly like the selection of mattes in here, and I'm not mad to have this in my collection, but I'm just not reaching for dusty mauve shadows or like dusty purples as much as I used to be. I think if this had released in like 2019 or 2020, this would have been like one of my favorite palettes of all time. I just don't feel myself like inspired or excited to reach for this anymore. I do want to pull it out this holiday season because this definitely gives like colder weather vibes to me, and maybe I'll rediscover a love for it. But as of this moment, if someone were to pass me $70 and I were to just pass this along, I don't think I would miss this for even a moment. And then similar to that, last year's release, the Icy Nude. I think this is pretty, and I created a couple of looks that I really enjoyed from this palette last year. But for one, the shade Bling, this like why are we putting a pressed glitter in like a luxury palette? And not only is it like a pressed glitter, it is, I think, the worst pressed glitter I have ever come across. It literally feels like sand. It is like a complete waste of a shade. No one should be putting that on their eyes, in my opinion. So there's that. And then there's just like a couple of the shades in here I'm just like a little bit confused by. Like I don't necessarily love this shadow up here or this right here. Like I don't know if I just don't love like the pops of warmth. And the Cool Chills palette from Cosmic Beauty, I could get a lot of the same style of looks as I was able to get with this. So that palette's like $38 to $40 depending on the conversion rate at the time, whereas this is $70. I do really like the shade Aurora and then VVS, but like I definitely wouldn't be sad if someone gave me $70 and I just had to turn over this palette. Then I have my Danessa Myricks Blooming palette, and you guys know how much of a diehard fan I am of the original Danessa Myricks Groundworks palette. I literally used that, I think, over 200 times last year. I'm sure it's gonna be close to 200 times this year. I use it every single day for my brows, and I was dyeing my hair red last year, so I thought I would get even more use out of this palette. I also thought I would use this for eyeshadows more frequently, kind of like as a companion palette if I was doing something more like rosy tone. But what I found about myself is I definitely am just more into brown eyeshadow than I am pinks, purples, and rosy tones. And this was like almost too red in my brows. I probably could get away with using this in my brows. I'm also not dyeing my hair red anymore, so I don't necessarily want to declutter this palette because I still feel like it could be a great tool to have. But if I could go back in time, I wouldn't buy that. Speaking of Bella Beauté Bar and not needing to be a collector, I will say this purchase made complete sense for me because I'm a blue lover. But in retrospect and just looking back, if I could trade the Bella Beauté Bar Realm of Fairies palette for my money back, I would. And I think the reason is I do love blue eyeshadow, but typically I like to do like a cool toned brownish matte look and then like pop a couple of blues on, or like pop a blue on, rather than like fully committing to something totally blue. So for me, this is almost kind of more of a blue companion palette. Don't get me wrong, there's some absolutely stunning shades in here. It is the beautiful Bella Beauté Bar quality. Like there's nothing wrong with this palette. I just don't find myself as excited to reach into this as many of my other Bella Beauté Bar palettes. Bella Beauté Bar palettes are quite pricey. Usually these 15 pan palettes are like anywhere from like $72 to $75. So like I feel like I wouldn't miss this one as much. Now I'm looking at this though and I'm like, okay, but still the shade Moonstone, Will-O-the-Wisp, Illusion, Reflection, like there's still some very beautiful blue shades in here, but I don't feel like this one was a necessary addition to the collection. Not that any of these were a necessary addition. And then the 10th and final palette is the Terramoon's Space Chemistry palette. Now I'm pretty sure this was like $80 or $88, so this was a very pricey palette. Before purchasing this, I knew I was a big fan of the Terramoon Space Chemistry singles. I had quite a few that had pan on them. I really enjoyed a lot of my Terramoon's singles, so I was so excited they were launching a palette. The mattes in here are horrible. Like I would have rather pay a little bit extra for these to be swapped out for special shadows. Like they're just a complete waste in the palette in my opinion. They have so much kick up and they just are not super impactful on the eyes. Would have done without those. And then I just feel like the longevity of these shadows, they just don't last on the lids. And I will say, I started to then reflect on the rest of my Terramoon singles, and I do have a lot of singles that I use on the inner corner. So maybe I don't notice as much if they're fading or just they're not taking over like the whole lid, so they don't have to like grip onto as much. I don't know, I just wasn't noticing the longevity issue until I had this palette. There's still some really, really beautiful shades in here that I love. I love Light Particle, Moonwater, Solarium, Atmosphere, but for $80 plus shipping back, I would happily give this up. So after that, that is going to wrap up and conclude this video. Those are the 10 eyeshadow palettes in my collection that I would exchange for my money back if I could. I would love to know what palettes you have lingering in your collection you personally would trade back for your money. Let a girl know in the comments below. Other than that, thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting me and my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.